Please direct your attention to the screens where we will enjoy a short video from our presenting sponsor, HDR Engineering.
At HDR, we've always helped communities adapt to a changing world. From bringing power to the plains more than 100 years ago, to reimagining how we connect, how we solve challenges, and how we create a brighter future. Leading the transportation transformation and modernizing mobility. With the unique perspective of many, we're motivated to shape our world for the better through inclusion, collaboration, and innovation. At HDR, we do things right to make great things possible.
Please welcome to the stage Austin Chamber President and CEO, Laura Huffman.
So it is so good to see you guys in person. The activity, you'll notice we're running a little bit late. So I dropped my youngest son off at Texas State, thank you Texas State, for college. And the scene down on the campus was a lot like what was happening here just about 5 minutes ago. And it's just because it's been so long since we've seen each other. So welcome. This is, in fact, we're not in 2020 anymore, by the way. This is 2021. And this is the Chamber's Regional Growth and Mobility Summit. So many of you have grown to take this as one of the few times that you can go to one place and get really smart on all the things that are happening around mobility and transportation in Austin and the region. This is that event, and this is what's going to be happening today. I'm really excited about the agenda. Special shout out to Return Safe. If you use the app, we partnered with Return Safe to do that. Our goal is to keep doing these events as long as we can. Hopefully we won't have to pause again. And your willingness to participate and make sure that it's as safe as possible for all of us is really, really appreciated. And thank you, Return Safe, for helping us do that. Okay, let's do some thank yous. This is no small feat, believe it or not. Even though we just went online for a year, it's no small feat to go back in person. So let me give some shout outs to some organizations that have helped us. First, let me talk about pivotal partners. We have Amazon, Ascension Seton, Dell Technologies, PIMCO, and Wells Fargo. Thank you all for helping us to make today possible. All right, foundation partners, take a look at this. Lots of people that have been with us for a long time appreciate all of your support, in particular bringing us back today. And our corporate partners, let's take a peek at that. Without you, this event wouldn't be possible. I'll take it a step further. Without you, the work of the Chamber of Commerce would not be possible. So thank you for all of your support. And thank you, HDR Engineering, for being the presenting sponsor for today's event. Also, I want to thank the Downtown Austin Alliance and my good friend and partner in crime, Dee Pert, for sponsoring today's post-reception event. The program sponsors for that are Cap Metro, HNTB, Jacobs, Pape Dawson, and Rifeline. So thank you all. And you know what? A lot of what we do depends on the support of elected officials, and the lights are down, but let me just invite you, if you are an elected official and you're with us here today, please stand and let us thank you for what you do. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite members of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Opportunity Austin investors to stand and be recognized, because you are the leaders that help guide the work that we do. Let us give you an applause. Stand up. One of the most active committees we have is the Regional Mobility Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, and if you serve on that committee, please stand up. All right. So the past 18 months obviously have been tough on all of us, both personally and professionally. we did a lot of really good work together in this community. We got a lot accomplished during a very interesting and historic period of time. Let me give you some examples. Last year was the best year we have had since the inception of Opportunity Austin. At a time when people were scared about what was going to happen with the economy, businesses were growing in Austin and businesses were coming to Austin at greater numbers than they ever had before. And I attribute this just to the sheer resilience of our economy. You read it all of the time, no matter what, whether it's a downturn or a pandemic. Austin is always predicted to be the last one in and the first one out. It happened again, and last year showed it. We have recovered almost all of the jobs that we lost in the early months of the pandemic. So huge economic success for last year. I-35 Capital Express achieved approval of funding. That is no small feat in this state. So congratulations to everyone that worked on that. We also approved Project Connect. And you're going to hear all about that today. 58% of the voters in Austin agreed in the middle of the sort of the least clear part of the pandemic that mobility and transportation was so important and so fundamental to this community that we had to make the investment even at one of the most uncertain times in Austin, Texas. And 58% of people supported that effort. Nonstop routes are up at the airport since 2019. That means we have more direct flights, all good news. But as always, with a city that experiences so much success, the trick is not to get complacent. So 2020 is showing us the ongoing trend of explosive growth, not just in Austin, but the region. And all of the issues that we're working on are important. And here's what it boils down to for us. At least when it comes to the economic vitality that we're experiencing, there are two things that we have to get right every single time. That's transportation and mobility. That's why we're here today. And that's talent. People come to Austin because they believe in the talent that we have here locally. And I would say the third thing that is just essential, it's why we're here, it's why we chose to raise our kids here, is that quality of life. Anywhere you go in this world, when you tell people that you're from Austin, Texas, it brings a smile to their face. We're just one of those places that people think of as a neat, happening city, and that is important as we grow our economy. It's important as we double our population. So we're going to double down on transportation today and mobility. We're going to talk about everything that's happening. We've got speakers and panels, but in the next 90 minutes, you'll know it all, or you'll know what questions you want to ask of us. So without any further hesitation, let me invite Justin Ward up to the podium. He is the Transportation Business Group Manager with HDR, and he is going to kick off the program. Justin, thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Laura. As Laura mentioned, I'm Justin Word, Transportation Business Group Manager with HDR, and it is my pleasure to actually be here with y'all today. At HDR, we know that together, as the video said, anything is possible, which is why we're committed to helping communities adapt to our ever-changing world by reimagining how we connect and solve problems to create a brighter future. So in building that brighter future for our region is exactly why we're here and what we're here to discuss today. We'll start with a panel discussion on the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion in our urban planning, and what is being done to ensure that as our region expands, it's done in a way that is accessible to all. So following that panel discussion, we'll take a short 10-minute recess for coffee and churros in the main foyer back there. Then we'll get back together in this room to hear from Tucker Ferguson, TxDOT's Austin District Engineer, who'll go into more detail on reimagining and redesigning I-35 to enhance capacity and to improve our east-west connectivity. So following Tucker, we'll then hear from the Director of the Corridor Program Office with the City of Austin, Mr. Mike Trimble. Mike will talk to us about the proposed cap and stitch program, a project to build parks or other amenities where a concrete corridor currently stands between Central and East Austin. To finish off today's program, we'll be joined by Mr. James Bass, Executive Director of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. James will talk to us about some projects that are not I-35. We'll get an update on several projects that are newly opened, yay, as well as a forward look at a few projects that are scheduled to break ground in the next few years. So Ms. Laura Huffman will come back after that and offer some final thoughts, and then we'll see you in the back in the main foyer for libations and hors d'oeuvres. So as you can see, we've got a packed schedule, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Peter Mullen, our Chief of Architecture and Urban Design with the Austin Transit Partnership. Peter.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody in person. Randy Clark was meant to introduce the panel. He got delayed at a Cap Metro board meeting, so I'll do my best to fill his shoes. I'm Peter Mullen. I'm the Chief of Architecture and Urban Design at Austin Transit Partnership, and we are really excited to be here and to partner with the Chamber for another Mobility Summit. Back in 2018, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point, we started the conversation about why our community needed to come together on a really bold vision for transit. So it's really exciting to be here now for the first time after the vote to talk about how we actually move that forward into reality. So really grateful to the Chamber and policymakers and partners and really all the members of our community for your trust and your support and confidence to get us to this point and looking ahead into the future. When our community voted yes on Project Connect, it was a huge step forward to create a more sustainable, more equitable, and more livable city, providing more opportunities for people to access jobs, education, healthcare, and the places that people love in our community, essentially bringing our community together. Project Connect is a comprehensive transit program, including a new light rail system, a subway, I love saying that, a subway that will increase system speed and service, an expanded bus system, a transition to all-electric fleet. And all these investments are driven by a holistic, human-centered approach to our communities and to our public realm. So it's not just about transit, it's about what transit can achieve and how we achieve it. So Project Connect is also an opportunity for us to address and to correct some of the historic systemic inequities that have plagued our community for a really long time. And everything we do at Cap Metro and at the Austin Transit Partnership is seen through that lens, the lens of equity. And we are continuing to actively bring resources and focus, I think just as importantly, to advance what I think are all our collective aspirations for a more equitable future for our community. So with that in mind, we put together a really great, really fantastic panel of leaders to discuss how Cap Metro, ATP, and the City of Austin together are working to achieve this. Moderating the panel today is my friend, the very formidable Sandy Guzman. Excited to see her again. Executive Director at the Austin Area Research Organization, ARROW. And I'm also just proud to recognize our other panelists today. ATP Board Chair, Veronica Castro de Barrera, Anik Baudet from the City of Austin, and Sharmila Mukherjee from Cap Metro. And I think having all of these agencies represented on the panel is just a demonstration of our collective commitment and partnership to deliver transportation equity for our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sandy. Sandy?
Good afternoon, everyone. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes, awesome. Great. Well, I'd like the panelists to come on up as well. We're going to go ahead and get started right away. We're going to get you everyone to their brownies. My daughter just went from being a daisy to a brownie, so I'm really fond of brownies right now. That was Saturday. We did have our rapid test as well as our PCR test. I am COVID-free, at least as of Saturday, so you can come near me. Congratulations. Oh, great. Here we go. That's probably a little bit better, isn't it? Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. This is really exciting. As I think Peter did a great job of laying out really what we're going to be talking about today. But I did checked my good friend Mr. Google or Miss Google, and asked to define transportation equity. Accessible and affordable transportation for everyone in the community, resulting in fair distribution of transportation resources, benefits, costs, programs, and services based upon differences in income, ability, and other factors affecting transportation choices and impact. I think we can all agree that that isn't only a function of transit, but transit is a place where equity really kind of spreads its wings. So I'm excited today to be talking quite a bit about Project Connect and some of the other transit work that's going on. So with me today, we have Anik Boudet with the City of Austin, the Senior Mobility Officer, Veronica Castro de Barrera, who's the chair of the Austin Transit Partnership, and Sharmila Mukherjee, the EVP of Planning and Development for Capital Metro. Thank you all for being here today. I know many of you are familiar with these wonderful ladies, and I'm not going to read a bio. What I'd like for them to do is to introduce themselves, while also talking a little bit about how equity has really been a thread throughout their career and how they are centering equity in their work as volunteers as well as transportation professionals. Why don't you go ahead and get us started, Anik?
Great. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see everybody in person, as Laura pointed out. I'm Anik Boudet, and I've been an urban planner in Austin for over 20 years, most of that with the City of Austin, spanning multiple departments and focused on land use and transportation equally. You know, equity is, for me, the tip of the iceberg right now. It's kind of amazing, actually, in all of the work that we do as planners in our role to improve the community. We're always thinking about future growth and how do we plan for future growth, and sometimes we're not really understanding, well, what about those who are here already? And to me, that is what's new and exciting about this phase in my career in transportation. And so recently, as many of you in here probably know, we did a massive update to the then 25-year-old or older AMATP, Austin Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and we now have the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan. And when we embarked on that planning process, or started the pre-planning process of talking about it, Project Connect had just failed in 2014, not the vision, but the funding. And so they needed to restart their process with the community, and we lockstep together with the idea that we were going to center those most vulnerable and those who needed better mobility the most. And that's what started my journey on really understanding, and I'm still learning every day, and you will hear that as you are embarking on equity within your own organizations, whether you're an engineering firm or a development firm. It seems like the city, Cap Metro, Aero probably are all trying to figure out what does that mean for our organization, both from an internal facing perspective and what of the products that we are serving the community with. How do we thread equity in? So still learning, but we'll talk a little bit about the $300 million that was approved with the vote, and I'll pass it on to Ms. Barrera. So thank you.
Anik. Well, thank you for all your service, Anik, because I know that I still remember for years seeing you zipping around the city on your bike and thinking,
I came here on my electric bike today.
what an inspiration, and it's really an honor to be here today and to be serving in the capacity as the chair of the Austin Transit Partnership. My journey is, I don't want to take you way back into my childhood, but I am the product of a free-range childhood, growing up in Mexico, where I love saying that my parents trusted the city to take care of their young. So what does that mean, right? And so I'm the youngest of 5 siblings. I have 4 other siblings. And so growing up in Mexico, in Central Mexico, and Latin America, really shaped my life, shaped my childhood. What I like to say in a very healthy way, because I was free to explore. And so I always go back and imagine what would it be like if children today were still playing on the streets and playing and could go to school and go buy an ice cream. So that's always been the impetus of my inspiration in trying to see a city that is nurturing. So when I came to the United States with my mother after her divorce, we had a very different experience in San Antonio. In San Antonio, we lived in a cul-de-sac, in a gated community, isolated from everything. So it was, without knowing, my first lessons in land use. What does that mean to not be able to go walk and buy milk or an ice cream, or to depend on a car for survival, and what that impact had on my mother's life. So I started really being intrigued by that dichotomy of two countries. And so I went to architecture school and studied urbanism and architecture, and I became, I'm a licensed architect. So when this opportunity, well, I'll take you back a little bit more, but a lot of my passion for design revolved around the architecture of mobility. And as a woman who loved to take buses and transit and walk everywhere and take my bike, I always felt very vulnerable walking around in the city. So I felt, what do we need to do as humans to design more humane environments? What does it mean to be waiting at a bus stop and not being splashed with the car because they're next to a puddle? So all of these things really piqued my interest, and I was lucky to be working in an engineering firm here in town where we did projects for Capital Metro, for transit, for the light rail project, for the commuter rail project. So that gave me a sense, and over the years, more and more curiosity and my passion for transit became even stronger over the years. So when this Project Connect passed, and thank you to all of you for supporting it, and for those of you who were not embracing the program yet, I hope we earned your trust, that we can do this better. And this means that we're committed to equity. This means that we're really wanting to share the built environment with everyone, not just the cars, or make the car happy, but everyone happy and thriving. So thank you again, and for voting for this transformative program. And Sharmila?
Thank you. I'm Sharmila Mukherjee. I'm EVP at Capital Metro, and I moved to Austin for this position about 18 months ago. And yes, a good part of that was during COVID, but I was supported by a great network of professionals and friends, and I have a couple of them on the panel today. Anik has been a great source of support from the very beginning. And what struck me is the great partnership that City of Austin and Cap Metro had. And today, what you see as success, or as at least through passing of Project Connect, it has a lot to do with the groundwork that was laid by the great professionals, and that includes the consultant community, today's sponsors, our great consultant team, City of Austin, Cap Metro team. They laid the foundation for this to happen today, and I'm just really fortunate, excited to be part of this journey. So what brings me to transit? I would say I really found in Chicago in grad school, I really found an internship absolutely accidentally with Chicago Transit Authority. I was just looking for a job. And it opened the door to a whole new world, personally and professionally. Professionally, I learned how schedules work, how you make that work, what's behind the scenes, how you do service planning. On the personal side, it gave me a lot of freedom to be able to have a free pass, to be able to ride the system freely and go anywhere. So I took it initially as a vehicle for my personal freedom. Now, if you ask me what equity means to me, I would say before equity became a buzzword or a hot topic, in my chosen field, in transit, it's always been a part of it. It is a great transit is a great equalizer. In a way that's, I think Veronica touched upon, in a very personal, very meaningful way. My husband shares stories about riding MBTA all over town as a little over like when he was in grade school, to be able to go anywhere using T. So those are very personal experiences. For equity, I would say transit is in a very sort of fortunate position as a sector. We don't have to reverse engineer our steps into being more equitable. I think we're just figuring out with this great partnership how to best contextualize equity and create a community through Project Connect that's increases opportunity, access to opportunities for all, and have some of the, maybe correct some of the historic inequities in its process.
Great, thank you all so much. This is wonderful. I think, most folks here are super familiar with transportation, but I think it would still be really good to do sort of a level set. So if you would talk a little bit about what the Alliance for Transportation, wrong group, the Austin Transit Partnership is, and how it was fun to just give folks a little bit of context to get us started with.
So this is a question we get asked a lot. What is the Austin Transit Partnership? And this is, it was given birth by our contract with the voters to create an independent entity that will deliver the program. And we're doing this in a way that the board is made up of community experts and also in collaboration with the city of Austin. So we have a 5-member board and 1 ex officio member. And our goal is to be able to be nimble and to have all the decision-making power to deliver the program. So we are tasked with issuing the contracts as we are going to be building the tunnels and procuring the vehicles and being able to stand up an organization that will work alongside Capital Metro and alongside the city of Austin in partnership together to deliver something in a way that is new to Austin. But we did this in a way that is also based on good examples from other cities. So we were using it as a methodology to create an independent government entity that will have the oversight, and all of us help each other deliver such a complex program. Because we haven't done something this large in Austin ever. So how we're learning from other agencies, this is also one of the best practices for us to be able to deliver on this program. And we will be managing the funding that comes from the taxpayers and how we allocate the funding and have our procurement efforts. And we're doing this through, as we're standing up this new organization, we're also trying to do it in a way that what hasn't worked before. So we're asking ourselves questions about, can we do it better? Can we do it simpler? Can we do it more innovative? How are we going to package these contracts so we can meet a very strict deadline? So part of, if you know what the contract with the voters came, we don't call it, it's really the timeline of how we're going to deliver this. So if you've been paying attention to our board meetings, some of the program, the way that is divided, Capital Metro is taking the lead in terms of the Metro Rapid system, and we're already launching some of the pickup service as well. So Austin Transit Partnership, through grant processes, will reimburse Capital Metro for those initiatives. And with the city of Austin, for example, with the $300 million for anti-displacement, thank you, for anti-displacement and displacement prevention, really what we're trying to do is also work in partnership with the city and how we're going to be giving them the freedom to do that because they do housing. And so we're going to be the oversight board that will then reimburse the city for that funding mechanism. So help us, reach out, help us grow, help us, give us advice and course correct where we're not going or meeting your expectations, because we are a young organization. We are building from the ground up, and we do want to do something unique, and we want to do something that I keep telling the staff that for all those of you who are here on development process or building anything in the city, it's complex. It's very complex. Well, we can't be our worst enemies, right? We have to be setting setting new norms and setting new ways of doing things better for the city as a whole. So we hope that we can learn in this process, and I do ask you to help us, give us grace, but also reach out and where we need your help and your support. And I keep telling everyone, how can we be involved? How can we help the Austin Transit Partnership? Well, I think it's not just the Austin Transit Partnership. I want us to think about Project Connect as a program that all of us will own. So when we say we own this program, is that each one of you, whether you're buying a house, you're renting a commercial building, or you are paying your mortgage, all of us own this system. All of us have a stake in the success of this system. So if the best thing I can ask of each of you is to help us be those great ambassadors, that it's going to take a long time as we rip out our streets and create a lot of dust. And I hope that you will give us the patience and the grace to make sure this is successful.
Thank you so much for your passion on all of this. I'm so excited that you're leading this organization as the board chair. Clearly, you've got the community's best interest in mind as you're working on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anik, we had a great transition there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that $300 million for anti-displacement measures?
Sure, absolutely. You know, I believe we are the first transit referendum that included funding for preventing displacement and really thinking about people who are here today who may or may not be transit dependent, but maybe they are. And also thinking about growth and how transit and Project Connect is going to help us into the future, right? And so all eyes on us. And so it's correct that the city, you know, has done affordable housing. We merged our planning and housing departments this last year, and so that we can have a better nexus between how we're doing short range and long range planning and housing, because we have such a affordability issue and housing shortage in Austin. And with that community development part of the departments that merged, they do a lot of programming. And so that's what this funding is for. I want to be clear that there's always more need than there is funding. So while $300 million is an amazing amount of money, you know, the housing department has a list this long, and we're going to do the best that we can, you know, learning how to do this. It's also a new capability that we need to grow at the city. That being said, the contract with voters had a lot of things in it, but also it asked the city to create an equity assessment tool to help program that funding. So in 2018, just a little history lesson, the city passed the largest in its history affordable housing bond. On its heels came $300 million for displacement prevention. And so we are really in a lucky place. It's complex. We have $6.8 billion for the infrastructure. We're going to rip up the streets. There's going to be a lot of dust. But wow, what a lucky position to be in. And I want to give a round of applause to that, because there was a time I remember being with the city in 1997, 1998, when we really had no money to do, not a lot of, we had no money to do sidewalks even. It was hard to find money to do a sidewalk. And so I really feel fortunate that the voters and the residents of Austin, you know, have said, yes, we need this. And so what's going to happen with this funding is that, you know, the city, and I can speak this way because I'm a longtime city employee, we often get in our silos. And so what this funding is going to do, and it's already doing, is creating new programming by centering those who are the most vulnerable to displacement, in creating the equity assessment tool and prioritizing that funding, but also looking from a temporal standpoint, how do we invest it in a way that gets ahead of and doesn't react to the capital investment? And that's really the key. And we are still figuring that out. Just like Austin Transit Partnership, new local government corporation, they are, as people say, building the plane while they're flying it. Like, so are we with the $300 million, right? We're still trying to spend the 2018 funding, and then looking at what we do with the 300, but we're trying to slow a little bit on the 300 because we really want to center the people who need it the most, and it takes time to do that correctly. And so we are really trying to slow down, listen to the community, work with the community. We've got the tool, it's almost complete, and it should be released sometime soon within the next few weeks. Don't quote me on that. I don't know the date exactly, but it's a really interesting tool that is meant to really ask questions, whether you're working on a new policy, whether you're working on creating a new program for anti-displacement or a capital project, and just help you think through maybe some institutionalized racism that might be happening that you're not aware of, and you become aware of it if you're open to the questions and open to thinking about them. So it's not demanding or suggesting that you do something, it's just creating a new thought process, and I love that about it. So that's what we're gonna do with the 300, and it's gonna be in tandem time-wise with the investments in the program of projects, which is Project Connect.
So that tool you mentioned, is that going to be released publicly or just internal? It will.
It will be released publicly soonish, like within the month, I think is a safe thing for me to say.
Okay. Sounds good. Great. Well, as y'all can hear, a lot of thought has been going into Project Connect particularly, and transit clearly really is a space for equity. And Sharmila, you mentioned this when you were talking as well, right? There is that opportunity there. In your role at Capital Metro, you're doing much more than just being engaged with Project Connect, right? You're doing the big visioning, the big planning. Talk with us a little bit about how equity is also there. And I think if you could hit on the Metro Rapid rollout as well, that would be helpful.
Of course. If you ask what equity means in our service planning process, I really would tie it back to what Anik just said, is that equity to us is, in very simple terms, is providing service to those who need it most. And I think it's very timely because COVID revealed where we already had our greatest needs. And as our commuter routes started to sort of decline, or actually had a rather sharp decline in ridership, our local routes, 5 of them specifically, they remained steady, and we realized where our essential trips are taking place. And we understood this intuitively, but data suggested, and in the midst of COVID, when most of us here were fortunate enough to be able to work from home, many of our customers were not able to do so, and they were relying on us. 48% of our ridership remained steady through that process. So, well, I want to put it out there. And then in terms of how we sort of blend equity in our service planning and keeping a balance between what we need to do for today, keeping an eye on our intermediate term a rollout of projects like Metro Rapid lines, as well as how to support Project Connect program of projects with recommendations that are going to be consistent with those. It is, I would say, definitely a balancing act. If we had no resource constraints, then I think we would be providing everything to everyone. And I just, in the same way that Anik talked about, 300 million is a great start, but it's not the be-all or end-all of that. We have very many other ways to bring in development that are transit supportive. And I think many of our chamber supporters and partners will take part in that. In our service planning process, kind of going back to that, we have an advantage. Like I said, transit always had equity built into it. Our Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964, for over 35 years, provided us with a framework. So we know what to look at when we do service planning. We know if a route's going to impact our low-income and minority populations adversely, and then our service planners are, and this is a shout out to you all, is essentially the gatekeepers of that. But over 35 years, a process that's working also becomes formulaic. So what then how we improve that process is with a great partnership with City of Austin. So we understand we have multiple programs beyond Project Connect, and one of the examples of that is the Transit Speed and Reliability Program. It's a joint partnership between City of Austin and Cap Metro, where we figure out where needs are, how it's shifting on a day-to-day basis, taking into account and contextualizing what's happening on the ground and kind of address it that way. So I would say 3 ways to summarize. We have a regulatory framework that allows us to be more equitable. Then we have a granular process with our service planning that takes a very deep look into it. And then third, through partnerships. And through that, we are learning more and more every day, and it's a process of fine-tuning that. On the topic of Metro Rapid, we have Expo and Pleasant Valley, which we call PV, are moving forward, and it's a very ambitious schedule. This is where I have to give a shout out to Dave Couch. He and his amazing team of Project Connect team, and both Capital Metro and ATP folks have taken a lead in this and have done a great job. It's and then South Lamar and Gold Line are following suit. So I would say 4 Metro Rapid projects are in various stages of planning and implementation. And look out for them. They will really start to change the community even more before you see orange and red line coming in. Orange and blue line coming in.
That's great. We're actually starting to see a system come up. It's really exciting to see that. Speaking of systems, you're on the ground floor, Veronica, of creating a new system with ATP, and throughout the whole organization, I think a key piece of what you were talking about was community engagement, right? We didn't talk about just in those words, but you have a few groups or formalized ways of bringing that input in. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We have, and a shout out to Jackie Nierenberg, who's carried the torch on so many of these community engagement meetings, but community engagement is not going to have a deadline. It's always going to be an ongoing process. But one particular thing that we have done is create 3 technical advisory groups for each of the areas that we're going to be dealing with. And so we put out a call to the community to advise us on matters of architecture, engineering, and construction. So that's one technical advisory group. Another one is the finance and risk group. The third is issues of community engagement, sustainability, aspects of what this program is going to entail. But also we have the Community Advisory Council, and that one is also an overarching, very passionate group of community members who are dedicating a lot of time to help guide us and be, eyes and ears of the community and bringing us what are the concerns. So each of us are meeting on a monthly basis. We're all cross-pollinating among each other. So the finance group is not working in a silo. So any decision that we're going to be making towards procurement or architecture delivery of the program, it has a finance aspect to it. So we all want to be working in unison. So those technical advisory groups have already launched, but we will always be seeking input from the community. So if you're interested in participating, please apply. And we're happy to have your knowledge and your passion to help us bring this forward.
That's great. Anik, you talked about one tool, the tool being a great example of a best practice that you all are using in really ensuring that we're thinking about equity in the right way. And I imagine that that's going to incorporate a lot of best practices. But I think it might be helpful for folks here to hear a little bit about, if you're familiar with the specifics of it. Learning how to talk again, apparently. The specifics, anyway. Right? What are some of those best practices that folks need to be thinking about in transportation, really even beyond transit? And we're going to be hearing later today about a lot of our road projects going on in the community. We know they have huge impact on different parts of our community in different ways, and I think it might be helpful for them to hear that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wasn't in the trenches in developing the tool, but what I do know as I came in and out of really understanding how it was evolving and what really it was going to be, because it was this equity assessment tool. What does that mean? Like if you asked everyone in this room, they could probably tell you what they think it should be, right? But one of the key takeaways for me was always going back to the question. And then the experts who were working on it, shout out to Brian Oakes, our equity officer at the City of Austin. There's a new equity officer at ATP, I believe. Yes, Jacqueline, and Cap Metro also has an equity-focused.
Actually, it's Courtney Chavez
Courtney.
for ATP.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline Evans.
So they're
for
all
Cap
working
Metro.
really closely together, and Brian was really leading it with different leaders, the innovation office at the city, the housing and planning department staff at the city, and various others from the city of Austin to create the tool. But the one thing they kept saying was, ask yourself who really is benefiting and who is being harmed by this policy, by this program, by this project, the unintended consequences. And I think that we as professionals, whether you're a planner, engineer, architect, community engagement professional, you know, I want to pride myself that I've done a lot of master plans and I've done a lot of plans, and yes, I've thought about that, but not as intensely as now. And I think it's the times, it's the pandemic, it's Katrina, it's what's happening in New Orleans right now as we speak, that are really putting the pressure on us as professionals to really think about who's being harmed and how can we change the policy, the program, the project in a way to do less harm. We may not be able to eradicate it completely, but to me, that's what the tool is going to help folks who definitely the folks who are in charge of the 300 million really think through. And then the tool is open tool to anybody who wants to use it. Anybody in this room, it's going to be online. If you think it will help you, you can adapt it. We hope that we can provide that service from the city. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I think that if anybody felt like transportation was boring or just very easy to figure out, you can see that there's a lot more to it, a lot of diversity, a lot of complexity to it as well. Absolutely. And I think that it's really exciting to be in a time when we've got new organizations going, new projects coming up off the ground, and an opportunity to really be making a difference as we're having a cultural shift in our community and in our country. Thank you all so much for your time. I'll give you each a minute to, if you have any closing comments.
I just have one little point to add on to it, is that as Anik talked about how to not do any harm, I would almost say to kind of extend that a little bit further and talk about how we better distribute the benefits across our community. And I think that is where Project Connect is going to make the greatest impact. It's going to truly improve access to opportunities and better distribute benefits along not just the corridor, but across the entire community.
Right. Veronica?
Well, you know, as an audience, you all are the Chamber of Commerce, and, you know, our resources, you are tasked with keeping our city economically vibrant, productive, healthy, and your current workforce and your future workforce depends on having options for mobility. So you are thinking about, really take a moment to understand, and I know you do as the business community understand the impact that having reliable transportation means for your business, and it means for the health of our community, that I hope that we will have you along as partners in this journey for the long haul, because it's not going to be easy. And I do think that your employees and the companies that are yet to arrive or yet to be formed organically from our own population deserves better. We deserve to have the opportunity to walk and bike and have access to opportunities. So I do invite you to help us through this journey and to not give up on us easily. I mean, I think I can't say it enough. It's a geometry problem that we have, and we're not going to build our way out of traffic with the current scenario that we have, and I think we have an awareness of this. I thank you for sharing the impact that the pandemic has had on our awareness about what is an essential worker, and how we are all in this room owe them enormous gratitude, because we were able to continue to lead our lives because we had access to food, and we had access through the sacrifices of so many people that showed up to work and depended on transit to be there. So I hope that Mayor Adler has said this in many occasions as we present the program and as we go out into the public. Take a moment to realize that we passed this transformational program in a pandemic when a lot of cities did not, when a lot of cities were afraid and they pulled back. And Austin said, we can't wait any longer. We're suffocating in traffic and we can do much better for our community, and we owe it to all of you. So I really just want to give you all a round of applause, and I just get really excited because as a good Latina person. But it's like, I want to shout out and clap and really celebrate this, and I hope we all take this opportunity to celebrate together as a community every step of the way, because we own this program, and Austin deserves the best, really, for mobility. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So did you want to add something?
I had one last, since we're supposed to be learning, as Laura said, walk away from here really smart about transportation. So a little bit about the Project Connect office at the City of Austin. So the $300 million is being administered by the Housing and Planning Department. So my office, the Project Connect office, we, at the end of FY22, will have about 18 folks, and our role is looking at utilities, permitting, and the environmental process, the EIS, and really looking at how do we, and I know everybody in this room is going to go, oh, heck yeah. Our processes at the city are not going to cut it to deliver Project Connect. We're going to have to do things differently. And so that's what the Project Connect office, in service to the partnership, to the Austin Transit Partnership and Cap Metro, our role is to look at permitting, look at how we're going to move utilities, what is the criteria, how are we moving through the environmental process, and the city speaking with one voice as we comment on the environmental process for the Orange Line and the Blue Line. And so that is the role of the Project Connect office, because we are working with the entire city. We sit in the city manager's office and report to ACM Fiandaca, who was supposed to be here today but couldn't be here, so I'm here on her behalf. So just a little bit about that office and the separation between more the technical coordination and the displacement prevention. So anyway, thank you for being here and hearing us out on equity. It's a forever journey. You're never going to be finished learning, and I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to look at equity programs within your organizations. And then I also want to say that it's not forgotten on the city that gentrification includes displacement of not only people but business and culture, and so that's in our minds as well as I'm talking to the business community. So thank you for having me and all of us.
So in 2000, I cut my teeth on local politics working on the light rail campaign. I can't tell you how excited I am to be where we are today compared to where we were back then, and all of the looking back and if only, but the vision and the passion that you all have to bring this project to fruition is so exciting for what it's going to mean for our community going forward. The CEO of the Austin Area Research Organization that's focused on the long-term social and economic well-being of all Central Texans, this is going to be key to our future. So thank you so much. Everybody help me thank them for their time today. Please enjoy your 10-minute break. We'll be back in this room. Oh, churros, that's right, not brownies, churros.
Is this on? Nope, there it is. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Lacey, this thing, it's cutting in and out. We're getting started. What is it doing? Everybody have a seat. I'm trying to figure out this microphone. There it is. Can you hear me?
Just have to come up here and make intimidating looks at it.
All right, I'm going to try. All right. We're going to get started. Can anybody hear me? It seems like this thing, okay, there it is. All right, so those of you with ties, raise your hand if you had to YouTube how to put this thing on. Show of hands. It's good to see everybody in person. Welcome back from the break. My name is Kevin Young. I'm Vice President and Central Texas Operations Leader with Jacobs. And at Jacobs, connectivity and mobility are a huge part of who we are. So we're very honored and excited to be a part of this event. At Jacobs, we challenge today and reinvent tomorrow, from built environments to missions to Mars. And so we do everything in between. Closer to home, we partner with agencies across Texas to solve some of our biggest transportation challenges. We especially appreciate working with the Texas Department of Transportation on Mobility 35 right here in Austin. And speaking of TxDOT, I'd like to invite our friend and colleague Tucker Ferguson to the stage. He's going to share some very important updates on some of the major projects that TxDOT is undertaking. TxDOT's the district engineer for TxDOT's Austin district, which, as y'all know, is made up of Travis County and 11 other counties in the area. Today, Tucker will share several proposed updates to I-35, as well as some ideas of how to improve east-west connectivity and some aesthetic improvements to 35. So, without further ado, everyone, please welcome Mr. Tucker Ferguson.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here with you today. And a lot of information to cover on I-35, and we've heard a lot of good information today here about this, but excited for this opportunity to work on safety and mobility and connectivity issues and address congestion on I-35, a project or a segment of highway that's not really seen any significant improvement or expansion since the 1970s. And we're pleased to have a project that is funded, community-driven, and just to talk about some of the details here today with you of what we're looking to do as we go forward. So I'm going to focus on the I-35 Central project, which is bracketed by State Highway or US 290 on the north side and Ben White on the south side. It's about 8.5, 9-mile segment of project, what we call CapEx Central. And really the need for this project is self-evident. As we sit here today, this segment of highway is the #1 most congested segment of highway in the state of Texas. And every year when that survey is updated, it bounces back and forth between #1 and #2. But as the last survey was done, it was #1. As you can see, the ADT, or the annual daily traffic on highway I-35, is about 200,000 vehicles a day. And when the last expansion was done in the mid-1970s, the population of Austin was about 308,000 people. It's grown today to about 2.1 million, and by 2045 is expected to be over 4.5 million in population. So with that much growth with population and businesses, along with that does come traffic. And it was great to hear the Project Connect presentation, because these two projects are some really exciting construction and innovation we'll be doing, and they need to work together. This is not one or the other. It's not a transit solution. It's not a highway-only solution. It was mentioned, we can't build our ways out of congestion. And we're just excited to partner with the City of Austin and Cap Metro and Project Connect, but also have it dovetail with our project as well. So this shows some of the statistics that we expect to see growth to 280, 290, 300,000 vehicles by 2045. And the majority, or over 80% of the traffic using I-35 in the downtown core is local traffic, meaning that it either starts or ends, has its destination in the downtown core. So there's not a lot of opportunity to bypass other than about 20% of the traffic. We show some safety statistics there as well. It needs upgraded because it does have a crash rate that's higher than the typical highway of this type on a statewide basis. So for many factors, we are looking forward to the improvements of I-35 and what we're doing on this project. Just some of the project details I'm going to get into, but I wanted to show this slide, and this is probably breaking all the PowerPoint rules because it's a picture of a slide within a slide. But I wanted to show this because 2 years ago, this was the slide that I used, and focusing on that bullet point in the lower right-hand corner saying construction starting contingent on funding. Well, 2 years ago when I made this presentation, we did not have the funding for this project. And it was mentioned by Laura early on in the opening remarks that last year our commission did make the dedication and the commitment to I-35 Central and did fully fund this project. So cobbling together the different sources of funding that we have, this project to the tune of about $4.9 billion is fully funded. And what it's going to provide is the additional capacity that I talked about that will be needed with the tidal wave of population and business growth that's coming our way, to the tune of 2 non-toll managed lanes in each direction. And I'll talk about a little bit about more of those in a minute. But improvements to safety and operations on the existing travel lanes. We'll be lowering the travel lanes. So you see the upper decks and the elevated sections right now. We've committed to lower those throughout the entire project. The decks will be removed. We'll be widening and enhancing over 15 bridges to reconnect east and west and enhance the different modes of transportation with bicycles, pedestrians, transit accommodations. And we'll be adding some additional east-west connections at 5th Street for all users and new pedestrian crossings at Cap Metro Red Line, just south of Airport Boulevard, as well as one to be located at a location to be determined later between 51st Street and US 290. We'll also be enhancing safety by lowering design speeds on the frontage roads, be providing over 16 miles of shared use paths. We'll make sidewalks ADA compliant and make them more accessible to everyone, and also connecting 13 connections to the urban trail network, all as part of this project as we look forward to advancing it, in addition to bypass lanes that I'll address in a minute. But something I want to address that's picked up a lot of attention recently is a couple of community alternatives that were brought to us that we felt needed to be studied and evaluated. And I'm not exaggerating, I've literally gotten thousands of emails, probably in the neighborhood of 4,000 emails, from community members asking us to consider Reconnect Austin, Rethink I-35, Walk Austin, and it goes by a variety of names. But we felt it was very important to vet these options, and basically Reconnect Austin was a community-driven approach that would basically bury all of I-35 below ground level and cap it from Cesar Chavez to about MLK, and then redevelop the ground on top of it with a boulevard type of section using the frontage as the frontage rows. Rethink 35 was really eliminating the interstate altogether and turning it into a 6 or a 7 lane boulevard with stoplights at a variety of cross streets. And we felt it was important enough, and we had enough feedback that we felt that we needed to bring in TTI, so the Texas Transportation Institute. We contracted with them to do an independent evaluation of these concepts, and we basically asked them 2 questions. Number 1, is it feasible? And we know that feasible can mean many different things, and if you put enough money on something, anything would be feasible. But we looked at it from a feasibility standpoint of, if we did this, what would be the traffic flow, what would be the impact, how would it operate, and would it be beneficial to the community? And then the second question we asked them is, if we did this, what would be the cost? I have no idea what I did. So there we go. Thank you. So looking at these, and there's a lot of information in this graph, but basically what we did is ran 3 scenarios of the projected traffic volumes and patterns using the 2045 peak volume changes, what we'd expect to see based on the growth in the afternoon peaks. And the first one of the TxDOT alternatives shows where we expect that traffic to go using the TTI modeling. And then the second and the third one is the same thing with Reconnect Austin and Rethink 35. And looking at the legend, if you see a road that is color-coded in red, that means that we expect traffic volumes to increase on that roadway segment. And in blue, we expect traffic volumes to decrease. And then the width of the red line or the blue line is the various amount. So you can see on the text dot alternatives, the majority of the traffic growth would stay on I-35, and we would expect to see the growth of traffic on I-35, and that's okay. We believe that there's a lot of traffic that uses secondary routes right now that is interstate traffic and needs to be on I-35. And really what we would design and build would be something that we would expect and hope for that to happen on I-35. But as you move across to Reconnect Austin, to Rethink Austin, as those two concepts would somewhat choke down and make less accessible the access ramps to I-35, and in the case of Rethink Austin would eliminate the interstate segment altogether. You can see that the traffic that is interstate traffic and those volumes doesn't magically disappear, but it begins to bleed over into the city network. And the city network is not designed to carry those volumes. It's not intended to carry those volumes. And especially on the Rethink 35, it really floods the entire city network and the majority of it on the east side. And by virtue of those two concepts doing that, we felt very strongly that in and of themselves, as standalone concepts, that these were not viable, especially Rethink 35, but Reconnect as well. Now, I will say that outer loop there in Rethink 35 is US 183, so one of my partners over at my table, James, you probably would like to see that, but we really don't think that's the right thing to do by taking interstate traffic and flooding the city network. However, the good news is that many of the elements in Reconnect Austin and Rethink 35 are things that have been incorporated and line up very closely with the goals that we have for Mobility 35, such as enhancing safety, optimizing the roadway footprint, increasing capacity, and minimizing additional right-of-way that we would need. And we go on and on. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but the enhanced cross streets that we've already committed to is something that was very prominent in those two concepts. And if we move forward, we think we can really show the benefit of incorporating those things, in addition to some other ideas that came out of the TTI study that will have further enhancement and further investigation, specifically coming out of the Urban Land Institute study that was also pulled into that. And the pictures on the right-hand side are a couple of illustrations that show what will be done on I-35 on all of the alternatives. And those is at 32nd Street, looking in the direction of St. David's Medical Center. And those the upper decks will come down, and you could expect to see something like the rendering at the bottom. And I have a couple of other renderings as well. And this is what an enhanced bicycle, pedestrian, and transit option cross-street bridge would look like. We have buffer zones of up to 20 feet. We have shared use paths of up to 10 feet that will be separated from traffic lanes. This shows some potential artwork and aesthetics that we can incorporate. And all of these things were components and elements of the two concepts that I mentioned before from Rethink and Reconnect that we are very pleased to be able to enhance and incorporate into our project, so we have something that's community-driven and will reflect the character of the neighborhoods and the community around them. So capping I-35 through downtown is another very popular idea, and that came through the Urban Land Institute's program and Downtown Austin Alliance, and we're very pleased to partner with the City of Austin and DAA to look at these possibilities. I'm not going to steal any of my friend Mike Trimble's presentation, because I think he's going to be talking about a lot of this next. So I just want to make it very clear that we are working with DAA and Mike and his team, and it's been a great partnership looking at these opportunities where we can put some caps and possibly stitches throughout the downtown core and make this a more community-focused elements that we have as part of the project. The picture you see there is an example of Clyde Warren Park in the Dallas district we're using as an example, and these elements will be rolled into our project wherever we can make those happen. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the aesthetic program. We'll be reinvigorating our aesthetics initiative and bringing in the city and various stakeholders to come up with ideas, again, to design a project that can reflect the character of the city It could include shade structures, enhanced bike lanes, sidewalks, panels, artwork, landscaping, those types of things. Decorative lighting is something else that we'll look at incorporating. We're very excited about this because we know it's very important to the community, and we want to make sure that we get those inputs and get those as part of our project. In the last slide that I will show, we hear a lot of questions and comments about what we will be doing with our environmental process, and I can ensure that we are engaging in the most rigorous EIS, or environmental impact statement process. I won't go through every one of these, but every one of these elements will be evaluated to its fullest extent, and how the project that we are proposing will impact the community and mitigate any of these issues of water resources, air, traffic, noise, community impacts, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, a lot of work has been done over the last decade and diligently over the last 11 years to get to the point of where we are right now. But we're not finished. There is a lot of work to do. We're just in the preliminary stages of this, and the final details of the design will be happening. And we've been working very hard to listen to the community and make changes that have been based on that feedback. And really, at this point, it would be a shame to halt this progress and halt the momentum we have on this project, especially with the commitment from our commission and having it be a fully funded project. And as a reminder, as we go through the environmental process, that doing nothing or the no-build option is still one of those options on the table. And we appreciate the support that we've gotten from this community to this point, and we ask for those continued comments and commitment. We're in the comment period right now, so we open up any comments in support of the project, opposed to the project, suggestions to how to make the project better, and that comment period will go through mid-September. But anything this community can do to continually support the project, we would really appreciate that, so we can build something that's reflective of Austin and benefits this regional and international highway. So thank you, and I look forward to giving you an update on where we are in the next year or the following year or many years to come on I-35. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. It's great to get an update on what's happening with Mobility 35 and see the progress that's being made there. I'm Scott Haywood. I'm the South Central Texas office leader for HNTB. We've been helping communities connect people and places for more than a century. In fact, here in Austin, it started with Ernest Howard, the H in HNTB. He helped design the Congress Avenue Bridge in 1910. And today, by rethinking the future of transportation, we're creating infrastructure solutions that bring people together to expand opportunities. As an employee-owned company, HNTB's success results in jobs and financial security for our employee owners living here in Central Texas. We care about the quality of life for Central Texans, and our infrastructure projects enhance mobility through all modes of transportation in our community. On a personal note, I was born and raised here in Austin, and it's just so exciting to hear about all the transformative projects that are being discussed today that are going to positively impact this community for decades to come. I haven't seen this much activity around infrastructure in Central Texas in my lifetime, and it's really exciting to see that taking place today. Now I have the opportunity to introduce Mike Trimble, the Corridor Program Office Director with the City of Austin. Mike has more than 20 years of experience in public management and administration, serving government from both the public and private sectors, including the last 10 years with the City of Austin. As Tucker mentioned, Mike is going to provide an update on the City of Austin's I-35 Cap and Stitch program to reconnect East Austin and downtown.
Well, good afternoon. And it's perfect that I followed Tucker because he set me up. I mean, I don't know much, there's not much more to say about the highway project, and so I'm glad he provided that overview of what TxDOT's looking at for the Capital Express Central project and the improvements they're doing for mobility for our region. So what I'm going to do is take an off-ramp, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cap and Stitch project that's associated with this project. So let me get to, there we go. So again, anybody who's been around Austin for a while knows what I-35, at least in its historical form, has meant for our community. It's been a physical and symbolic dividing line between East and West in our community. A lot of legacy of segregationist policies on the city's behalf, which we're not proud of, but communities of color were relocated over to East Austin when it was then East Avenue, and then I-35 came through and really just reinforced that division. Now, that's not just unique to Austin. That happened in several communities around the nation post-World War II with the highway construction program, but it is part of the legacy that we're dealing with in city. And so now with this opportunity with the Capital Express Central project, we can look at ways to address that. And so this picture just represents some of the ways that I-35 has been, that physical barrier, elevated lanes, also looking at the upper lower decks. And again, just has been a less than inviting crossing for the community to get from East Austin to downtown. And then also just very, very difficult to really kind of reconnect the community in its current form. And so I think it's important for the city to also, and us to think about the current condition of what I-35 is. And so the opportunity that we're presented with is that TxDOT is looking to depress those lanes through downtown, really kind of all the way through, beginning at Airport, all the way down to Lady Bird Lake in both alternatives. I think there's one that might have elevated lanes, the managed lanes at Airport for alternative 3. But this really presents us a huge opportunity to reconnect the community. And so with that, the city manager asked me to lead this project on the city's behalf. And I got involved really after the ULI study occurred. And I know the Urban Land Institute started a study and worked with the Downtown Austin Alliance, and a lot of folks in this room, I believe, were a part of that. Maybe you're a part of a stakeholder group. Maybe you were just watching some of the work happening and got a briefing on the report. But that report led to recommendations for how best to leverage this opportunity that we have with the Capital Express Central project and reconnect East and West Austin. And so the way we're looking to do that is a series of caps that we can do now over the depressed lanes. And so here's an example of what a cap is. Some of you may have been to Dallas and the Clyde Warren Park. That's a cap improvement. There's several cap improvements around the nation, and so maybe you've seen those as you've traveled. And so we're looking at this opportunity to create a series of caps over the highway that can then help to reconnect our community, be an inviting space, an amenity. It can be event space, park space, concession space. There's a lot of different uses for it. We don't want to presuppose what that use is going to be yet. We have a lot of work to do with the community to try to figure that out. But this is the opportunity that we're looking to leverage, is to create these series of caps. And as Tucker's already mentioned, TxDOT is already looking to incorporate a series of stitches into the Cap Express Central project. And we're very happy to hear that, Tucker, and very glad to partner with TxDOT on that. And so we're already looking at widened bridges, which is what a stitch is, and that provides us an opportunity to get better separation of modes between vehicles, get pedestrians, bikes behind the curb, possibly in a shared use path or other means, landscaping, other amenities. And so we're very excited about that opportunity. Along with this, we also have an opportunity to even do some extended stitches and make even wider crossings, working with TxDOT, and so we're very excited about that opportunity as well. And that's some of the work that we're undertaking right now. And this is just a summary of the ULI report that was done and what the recommendations were. So they had recommended a series of stitches, one between Cesar Chavez and 4th Street, one from 6th to 8th Street and 11th to 12th Street. And that recommendation was based on some of the analysis and information that they received from TxDOT. And so now, working with TxDOT between the City Downtown Austin Alliance and the TxDOT project team, we've been able to identify some additional opportunities. At least at this high level, at this very preliminary point, we've been able to identify that not only all the ULI recommended locations can be done, but potentially an addition at 4th and 6th Street around the red line crossing. We could possibly do a cap there, and then also at Airport Boulevard, as we're looking at that area, and then possibly a nice connection to the red line and that crossing as well there, just south of Airport Boulevard. So now we're looking at about 13 acres of potential cap improvements, which is more than double the space of the Clyde Warren Park in Dallas. And so it's a huge opportunity from our standpoint. And so we're excited about moving forward and looking at this. And again, this is the nearest example we have of a cap project, the Clyde Warren cap. And it's a huge amenity for Dallas. It gets a lot of foot traffic, pedestrian traffic. A lot of folks use this for events, just to get away and have a nice park amenity, concession space. And so again, this might be some of the things we do, but we obviously want to work with our community and work with you, the chamber and our other key stakeholders, to figure out what works best for our city and what would work best as far as the amenities and configuration of what goes on those caps for Austin. This is an example of a stitch improvement, and this is one actually looks very similar to what Tucker showed in his mock-up. Which shows kind of the planters, the ability to do some plants, possibly trees in a planter configuration on that crossing. And then also, this is the Long Street crossing over I-71 in Columbus, Ohio. And so if anybody's been there, this also has a huge mural on one side of it. And this is where some of the arts and cultural aspect can come in of what we could do. This is a mural that really represents the historical Black community that was there and really done in conjunction with the community. And we're looking to do that as well, working for the Cap and Stitch project, but also partnering with TxDOT and the community for the overall Cap Express Central project. Again, this is a partnership. The key word here is collaboration and partnership. And so we've done a lot of work in collaboration between TxDOT, the City of Austin, Downtown Austin Alliance, and the community thus far. And this is exactly what's going to be needed to move this project forward. A lot of things to figure out, exactly what goes on those caps, what does that look like, how does that really help to reconnect the community and really meet our community objectives, address those legacy issues that we deal with in the East-West divide. And then also we have to figure out the funding, and that's going to be the fun part. And so those are the things that we're going to be looking at over the next couple of years to make sure that we can get the best configuration of what goes on those caps, the best amenities for the community, and then figure out actually how to get this done. And so our timeline is very contingent upon the TxDOT timeline. So right now, that's why we're working so closely with the TxDOT team, is ultimately what we'd like to do is to get our project incorporated into the design build contract that TxDOT is looking to let a couple of years out. And so we're working quickly on the timeline to kind of meet them there. They have agreed to environmentally clear the cap improvements as part of their project. And so that's a big win for us. And so there is a lot of real concrete momentum for this project. But again, over the next couple of years, it's going to be important for us to really keep in sync with TxDOT and make sure that we can incorporate this as best we can into their project, which will be a huge cost and time savings, and really is the most feasible option for us to get these improvements in place. And that's really all I have. And again, thank you for your time this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Mark Ramser. I'm with Pape Dawson Engineers. At Pape Dawson, our core values of integrity, trust, and excellence fuels everything we do. We combine more than 25 years of local experience to create strong networks of relationships with our communities to help serve our clients. At Pape Dawson, we provide civil engineering, surveying, and environmental consulting services for a number of mobility markets around Texas, including both land development and transportation. I, along with the over 100 local staff members, are blessed and proud to have been part of the growth of Central Texas. And now, please join me in welcoming James Bass, the Executive Director of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. James will share some updates on recent successes, including the newly opened 183A toll road, as well as provide us some insight on future projects. James?
Thank you. And just for your own sanity, I'm well aware that I and Laura are all that is between you and happy hour, I think. So I will try and go through hopefully a content-rich presentation, but in somewhat a fast fashion. So you may be wondering, who is the RMA? We are a regional group here in Williamson and Travis County. We have 7 board members, 3 by each of the counties and 1 by the governor, that lead and guide us in our day-to-day activities. And we are one regional partner. We work with the counties, as I mentioned, the cities, with Campo, and with TxDOT as well. And I want to do a quick, informal, and very unscientific survey. And by unscientific, I mean just answer the questions in your own mind. Don't feel a need to raise your hand at all. How many toll operators are there in the Austin region? And which toll roads do they operate? So some of you may be surprised that there are 2 toll operators in the Austin region, and that is CTRMA and TxDOT under the name of TxTag. And you can see the different roads that each entity operates within those. Now, at times, that can create confusion and challenges with customers. Normally, a customer shouldn't care who operates a road, and a customer driver doesn't really care if it's a state roadway, a county road, or a city road, or a state toll road, or a regional toll road. They just want to get from point A to point B. But at times it can create a challenge when drivers choose not to have an electronic tag and they choose to be billed through pay-by-mail or license plate billing. We and TxDOT have separate processes for that. And if you happen to drive up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area without a tag, NTTA has a third process for pay-by-mail. So I know I have friends and neighbors who get a pay-by-mail bill from one of the entity and they pay it, and the following week they get one from the other entity, and they are quite confused by that. So that's why we think from a customer convenience standpoint, all of the tags and all of the operators and toll roads within Texas are what we call interoperable. And so we at CTRMA are tagnostic. We don't care if you have a Tex tag, a toll tag, an easy tag, an Oklahoma tag, a Kansas tag, a bank pass, we take them all. And it is convenient for that driver, because even if I do end up driving on a TxDOT road and a CTRMA road and an NTTA road and a HECTRA road, I get that in one consolidated bill and can continue to move forward, and it's just less hassle for our customers, we believe. Now removing just the roads and focusing on the roads that the CTRMA has delivered over the years and those that we have under construction and that we're planning. And I'm going to highlight a few of these now, really starting with the 183 toll project there, the last one under the open roads. And so hopefully many of you have driven this on the way or to the airport or on the way home. The 183 toll project, you can see, basically goes from 290 to 71, 8 miles in length, just under $750 million, and it's providing connectivity from southeast Austin to northwest. I had a conversation earlier that somebody drives this going to the Austin FC soccer games. And so it provides great connectivity for those who want to use it. And as was mentioned, we are a big believer in mobility is more than just moving vehicles. It's about moving people in whatever mode that they choose to move in. And so on all of our projects, you will see shared use paths, pedestrian bridges, trailheads for people that want to move differently, not in a single occupant vehicle. And on all of our facilities, CAT Metro and CART transit vehicles move without a fee. And that has proven to be quite successful on the MOPAC Managed Lane project. Another project that recently opened up is at 290 and State Highway 130. And if you recall from the earlier slide, 290 is operated by CTRMA and State Highway 130 is by TxDOT. But we were able to partner together and build 3 different direct connectors in that intersection to help the movement and mobility, so drivers moving from one roadway to the other no longer have to exit, go through a signalized intersection, and continue on their way. They're able to make that much more seamlessly. Now, under construction, we have a 183A Phase 3 project that's going from State Highway 29 to Hero Way. It's $277 million. And to show you what's going on there, you can see on this slide, on the outside of this slide, are the non-tolled general purpose lanes of US 183. I know they're marked as frontage roads, but technically, I'll geek out a little bit. They are the non-tolled general purpose lanes of US 183. And in that median that's been there for years, the contractor is going in and building the toll road and the toll lanes in the middle, saving room for a third future expansion lane as demand dictates that that'll be needed over time. Another project that we are partnering with TxDOT on is the 183 North project. This will be adding 2 variably priced express lanes in the middle of 183, basically from State Highway 45 North all the way to just past Mopac. The estimated cost of that project is just over $600 million. And again, to show you what's going on that particular project, those that travel 183 between Mopac and State Highway 45 North, you may have noticed that at times there's a 4th general purpose lane, and at times it disappears, and at times it reappears. And so one of the things going on in this project is that non-tolled 4th lane will become continuous. It's going to be built, thanks again through a partnership with TxDOT. That 4th lane will become continuous throughout the corridor. And in the middle, in that median, once again, we will be building a 2x2 tolled express lane in that corridor, which will then have a direct connector and connection to the southbound Mopac managed lanes. Speaking of Mopac managed lanes, after that opened up, and really for a while, there's been a backup as people get on the frontage road and trying to enter Mopac from Windsor and the infield area going southbound. And we did some analysis and looked at it and really think that that choke point is farther downstream. And so we have a project in the planning stages we hope to take forward to construction in the middle part of next year that'll add some auxiliary lanes and an additional lane to allow for some weaving and change that exit to 360 that we think once it's in place will help move that traffic more efficiently and actually relieve the bottleneck. And as you can see, relatively speaking, in the world of transportation, it's generally speaking, a small investment amount of around $15 million, but we think it'll have a large impact on the mobility for people's afternoon drive, making it easier for them to get where they want to get at the end of the day. Another project that we are currently working with stakeholders and others is looking at restarting the Mopac South environmental study. This project was halted a few years ago, primarily due to some litigation at the time that has been resolved through the courts. And so we are looking to restart that public engagement process, hopefully by the end of this calendar year. And our hope is to really pick up right where we left off. So a few years ago, we had an open house number 4 where we brought information to the public in order to get their feedback. And since a few years have passed, our thought is let's not jump in with answers. Let's revisit the situation and remind everybody where we're at and basically do a repeat of that earlier open house, do it again, re-engage the public, start that conversation with them once again to see what it is that they want and need through this project. And if you want any information on the projects that are under construction, hopefully it's fairly intuitive, the website that you'd go to, 183A, 183A.com. Go through and you can actually sign up for project newsletters, construction updates, and we'll send that to your email. If you're only interested in one of the projects, go to that website, sign up, we'll send that information to you. If you'd like to follow us more generally, you can see our social media handles on this page as well. And I think I've run through that, and Laura, I'll now turn it over to you to wrap us up.
Okay, now I am literally the only thing standing between you and the drinks that are outside that door. So I'm going to make it fast. First, I want to thank all of our speakers for coming out today. That was a huge amount of information that you all just received in the last couple of hours. It is so good to see everybody in person and to visit with you during the break. If you have a moment to stay and grab a drink, please do. We'd love to answer questions. I know our speakers are going to be here, and they'd love to visit with you more about the projects. Top line takeaways for me from the day across all of these projects, across all of these speakers. First, we've got more investment happening than we've had in a really long time, if ever, in Austin when it comes to mobility, infrastructure, and transportation. Second takeaway, across all of these projects, people are thinking comprehensively. Each of these projects is tackling more than one thing at once, and I think that's perfect. None of these are just roadways or just railways. These are all opportunities to solve several problems all at one time. Maybe the last two are dear to my heart. One is, I saw a lot of coordination between organizations that have not always coordinated. So kudos to you all for working together, from the federal government to TxDOT to the City of Austin, ATP, it's CTRMA. It is refreshing to see you all integrate your philosophies and your plans together. And the last thing, it's about people and it's about design, and design matters. So I love it that in each of these stories you're showing us how your project is going to solve a problem and create value for this community. And I really appreciate that approach with all of you. So that leaves me with an ask of the group. And here's the ask. When you get an email from the Chamber of Commerce that has a word like action alert in it, it is usually an indication that we need you to do something. It is clear that we are at really neat points in all of these projects, but we're nowhere near done with any of these projects. And on occasion, we need you to weigh in. We need you to weigh in with your support, because the project is at a moment in time, either at the state or at the city or at CTRMA, and we need them to hear from you. We are in that moment in time right now with TxDOT and I-35. So when you see these emails, we try to make it super easy for you to weigh in with these agencies. But please take the time to do that. Engagement matters. You can see that all these agencies, they've got Twitter accounts, for God's sakes. I mean, engagement matters in this community, and making sure that your voice is heard is really important. And one way that we provide service to you is to make that easy for you. So with that, this concludes our mobility session today. Thank you. Come in the back of the room, and we've got drinks and snacks, and would love to visit with you more. You guys have a great afternoon. Thank you.